Hi, I'm Denise Lee, and I play Jacqueline.
Hi, I'm Lisa Fairchild, and I play Eileen.
I remember when I first saw clips of the show with Tanya Pinkins
Oh, with
and
Tanya
Diane
and
Reese,
the Diamonds.
and I saw that and I went, this looks so fascinating, because it wasn't a typical character of the typical African-American woman, and it was just an important piece, I think, at the time, and I was so excited to see somebody doing it here. I was wondering what took it so long.
I wish I could say that my first reasoning was quite as altruistic as yours, but actually I saw two really great female parts for women our age.
Yes.
And so that was really what drew me in first. I'm just going to be honest about that.
Which is something that doesn't happen often. You're right, you're right.
And then after I also went and watched a couple of the clips, and the one clip that I watched, they actually weren't even on stage. They were just sitting opposite each other on stools doing the lines. Did you see that one?
Yes.
And just the words, the text of it, I said, oh my goodness, it is time, and we need to do it. And then Circle is doing it. So.
Well, I was also excited because it wasn't a musical, because I'm just so excited to be able to do a piece that's not a musical.
And I was so excited it was not a musical because I don't sing.
Two different reasons, but the same motivation.
So it meant that I could do a piece with Denise Lee, and I didn't have to sing.
I was just happy. I was so excited. So that's because that's what I want to do more of. Not that I don't want to do musicals. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I don't want.
You should probably clarify.
Yeah, I want to be sure. Don't look over me for the next musical. But this is a very important piece. And when I do a play, I want it to say something.
I agree.
It needs to be important. I don't want to just do it because I need the insurance weeks, which I always do.
Well, that kind of does come into it, though.
But at this point, for me now, it really means more to me that the piece says something.
Yeah.
It really does.
I think it brings to the forefront the conversation that you especially have done a great job in the last 8 months of trying to get going in the Dallas-Fort Worth community. I mean, I think we were really, really hit hard last summer. It was in our face when the shootings happened in downtown Dallas. And I mean, it's sort of been building up around the country, and we'd all been getting really uncomfortable and kind of staying on Facebook and having that conversation. And you said, y'all, we have to get off of Facebook and have this conversation face to face. And then this play forces people to have the conversation face to face. And because of the proximity of the seats in this theater, these people will not be able to sit back away from it and take themselves out of it.
What I think the way it's written is how it spoke to me, because it doesn't have the overt racist, the typical or traditional things that you hear, that you would label a racist or a victim. And I think these characters, I think people in the audience will be able to see themselves as these characters. So hopefully, because I think what happens is it's real easy to be able to come into a play and go, oh, that's just so bad and that's so awful.
I agree.
But it will force you to look at yourself and wonder, do I say those things? Do I do those things? And hopefully you'll see something in you that scares people to see that. But I don't think recognizing the behavior doesn't make you a racist. It makes it, there are certain things that are ingrained based on what we see and what we hear in media and television and that.
And environment.
Absolutely. It's about, once you recognize it, then what will you do about it? Exactly. When you know better, you should do better.
Right.
Yeah. So I play Jacqueline, and I think in the ways that I relate to her is that she's very strong, a little bit sarcastic. I could I could see that.
You think?
Just a bit. I don't think that I would like to say I'm not manipulative. I'm more straightforward, and I kind of say what I want. But I think that she is really just trying to survive. She's coming to work, and she's just trying to survive in this environment. And she's found a job that she likes, and now it's like she feels like she's moved up a bit, and now she feels that the powers are against her.
Right.
And what happens is just in the way she reacts, it brings out probably the worst in her. There are times that, and I've had these questions as to whether or not she's being sincere or whether or not she's just really being,
Manipulative.
Yeah, manipulative. You said a nicer word than I was about to say. But and that's going to be for the audience to decide whether or not you think she's being very genuine, or and they'll have to decide that. But I think the character herself is just a woman trying to survive.
Right. And I think race does come into play because it is a woman of color that the play's been written for. But that could be anybody. Jacqueline could be anybody. She's just a woman trying to survive in an office environment.
Correct, correct. And the fact that she is a woman of color adds that other layer.
Exactly.
Because I don't think that some of the things that come up
would come up
if she was not a woman of color.
I play Eileen, and I do relate to her in that she is one of these people who always wants everything to be good. She just wants everybody to be happy. She doesn't like conflict, and that is me. I am very much that person that always tries to put everybody at ease, make sure everybody's happy. It's all good. I'll bring you cookies. That really is me, and that part of her I do relate to. It has been interesting delving further into her character in terms of the text of this play, in that Lisa has been forced to say, occasionally when I think I'm making things all better, or when I'm just trying to reduce the conflict in a situation, I may actually be enabling the people to separate away from the behavior that's, I wouldn't say it's bad, but may not necessarily be helpful. Or in our case, the fact that the doctor is our employer. He is our employer. And because I'm trying to keep things good with the doctor and keep nice, pretty, but everything can't always be that way.
Right.
And I am absolutely a Pollyanna in real life, so that's what I relate to most about her. I'll let Denise do that.
Okay, so I think that Rasheeda Speaking is about, from the perspective of Jacqueline, a woman who all of these things, she's misunderstood, and it becomes then this power play. And I think the power play is more between she and the doctor, and Eileen is more of a pawn in this. And the manipulation and the conspiracy, if you will, and the one-upmanship as to who is going to win this battle through the manipulation. And it's really a mind game that they're playing.
There's a lot of mind games
that are being played, and so it's really about who's going to win.
Yeah.
Community conversation. Well, actually, it started with an idea I had called Change the Perception, which, after Trayvon Martin was murdered, I was just very frustrated at how the perception of men of color were portrayed in the media and on television, and I think that has a whole lot to do with how people respond. And so I had this idea about 5 or 6 years ago, and I had a plan in place that I wanted to work with youth and start involving them in conversations. And life got in the way and never happened. After the police shootings in July of last year, I think we were all just, we were about to boil over. And I didn't know what else to do. So I literally went on Facebook and posted, I want to have a meeting next Monday. I don't know where it's going to be. And I tagged a lot of people that had buildings. And Bart McGinn and at the Dallas Children's Theater said, you know, I bet that we can get you the space. And so they called me and told me that I could have the space to have a meeting. And I just told people to show up. And people didn't know what they were coming to. And 200 people showed up, which tells you that, you know, people were hurting and people needed to talk. And the other thing that I wanted to be sure was, because every time a tragedy happens, then there's a gathering, and then there's politicians and ministers and leaders who talk at us. And we never get the chance to talk or have a conversation. And so my whole idea was to come together. We divide in random groups. You got numbers as you came in, and you divided in these groups. We came up, my friend Shannon Pinkston and I started this first one, and we put these groups to get questions together. And the rules were, you had to listen. You didn't come with an agenda. Nobody was right. Nobody was wrong. This was going to be peaceful, respectful conversation to get to know one another, not to prove a point or, you know, push an agenda. And, you know, with 200 people in the room, we had about 15 groups, I can't remember, and people, and it was, we were there for 3 hours. And when you're in the room, you are Mike and Joe and Bob. You're not senator or mayor or, you know, attorney or candidate. You are neighbors and getting to know one another. And it was and everybody is welcome. So as we have continued that, we meet once a month, every fourth Monday at the Dallas Children's Theater. And so as we have grown, we've had small crowds of maybe up to 20, up to the 200. But every time there's somebody new there, and somebody takes something away, and what it does is it breaks down the walls. And we've talked about Black Lives Matter. We've talked about white privilege. We have talked about everything under the sun, especially with the new laws about immigration. We have had women from the Muslim faith to come into our groups to have conversations with us. People who have never, you know, don't know anything about the Muslim faith, or have never, you know, don't think they've ever met anybody Muslim or anybody gay, or don't have black friends. And they come in and they talk about what their fears are and what their perceptions are. And then they learn and they meet these people face to face, and we meet each other face to face and realize that, again, it's just what our perception is. And once that changes, we can deal with each other in a different way. I just feel that you can have as many laws in place as you want, but if you don't change hearts, then nothing changes. And, you know, until recently, one of the things that I give is that you haven't seen, especially with African-American men or Muslim men, if you look at the characterizations on media and television, then it's easy to see why people feel and talk to each other the way we do, because we're limited now to Facebook or television, and we don't have the one-on-one interaction that we used to have. So I think it's so important to have these conversations, and people are able to answer and agree to disagree. You don't have to come in and it all doesn't end in kumbaya and everybody doesn't leave all wonderful and happy, but they always leave with someone else's perspective. I like to think that we don't learn, it's not that we just learn about each other, but we learn a lot about ourselves. We've viewed a couple of movies. We watched the documentary 13th and had discussions. We've taken these bias tests online and then come and talked about the results. And people are changing. And then I've had people call me and say, you know what, I never would have noticed this had I not been part of the conversation, or I never would have stepped in to speak up if I hadn't been part of the conversation, because it does take all of us to speak up for one another. I shouldn't just speak up when I see African Americans being wronged either in society. If I see something happening to anyone that is wrong, I have to speak up. It's just a matter of right and wrong. And if we don't stand up for right together, then we're gonna perish. And so, hopefully, bringing it to Fort Worth will bring a whole new audience, and we can start a new conversation here in Fort Worth and get people talking here and continue here and as many places as we need to. We like to say we're changing the world one conversation at a time.